ready to go, and it's 7 o'clock. So on that note, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of Monday, January the 25th. We thank you all for tuning in with us tonight. I do wish to begin tonight's meeting by recognizing that we are meeting virtually on the territory of the Sauk Nation. And Council, if you turn your attention to item 3, it's Ministerial Order M192, that Council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance under Ministerial Order M192, as council chambers cannot safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend, and that council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comments and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. So on that, I'll look for a member of council to please move item 3, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lagenas. Pretty familiar with this now, but I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, just checking. So that is unanimous. Thank you. We have our meeting agenda here tonight, so look for approval of tonight's our January 25th regular meeting of council to be adopted as circulated by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Lagenas. And I'll call the question on approval, please. All those in favor? And anyone opposed? That too is carried unanimously. So our first item brings us to our public and statutory hearings. And that is item 5.1. So I'm going to turn this to staff, please. And I just note that I don't have my public hearing script in front of me. I forgot to print that. I'm sorry. So, I wonder if that, Ms. Machada, if you can help me out with that.
So if I may, I can read that statement on your behalf, Mayor Tait.
Yes, please. That would help. Thank you.
This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is the Mayor's responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. Those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, commence your address to the council by clearly stating your name and municipality of residence. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaws. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaws with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. Please note that this public hearing forms part of the January 25th regular meeting of council, and as such, it is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during the public hearing, will be posted on the district's website. That's everything.
Thank you very much, Ms. Machada. So on that note, I'll officially open the public hearing, and this is for 2604 Otter Point Road. So over to staff, please.
Thank you and good evening. I'll just share my screen here. All right. This proposal is a zoning bylaw amendment application for rezoning a property located at 2604 Otter Point Road from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5. And it's for the purpose of creating 3 new lots within the subject property. Council approved first and second reading of the zoning amendment at its regular meeting held on November 23rd, 2020. and directed planning staff to schedule tonight's public hearing. Here's a map just showing the zoning of the subject property and its surrounding area. The property itself is approximately 1.26 hectares in size and is located approximately 2 kilometers north of the town center area. Access to the subject property is currently through road dedication off Otter Point Road, and the surrounding neighborhood is a mix of rural, residential, and agricultural land uses. Subject property is designated community residential in the OCP. The proposed zoning amendment meets the objectives of the community residential land use designation, and the applicant has applied to rezone to RU5, where the minimum lot size for subdivision is 2,500 square meters. The new lots proposed will provide low-density infill while preserving the rural character of the surrounding neighborhood. This map here just shows the layout of the 3 lots and the proposed road that would lead into the subdivision that's proposed further west of this, that is not the subject of tonight's application, but is all part of the overall transportation network for these developing lands. Section 4.7.3 of the OCP requires the minimum of 10% of the total of any proposed bare land or strata single-family residential subdivisions as affordable housing lots. The applicants acknowledge this and its importance for affordable housing, and has volunteered to contribute $6,000 as part of this process. The staff support the cash in lieu contribution being proposed by the applicant for affordable housing, and the RU5 zone requires a site-specific analysis of the soils for properties that are outside the sewer specified area for which this parcel is located within. The analysis determined that the soils were suitable for the conditions of on-site sewage systems. This was referred to the health authority, which stated that they had no objections to the proposed amendment. As part of this application, the applicant provided a development justification rationale for the zoning, and request had stated that the rezoning will be beneficial to the community of Souk by creating 2 new lots with no negative environmental impacts. These 2 additional lots are large, which will add to the diversity of the neighborhood and create much needed housing opportunities. The rezoning amendment application meets the requirements of the District of Souk's bylaws and policies. Staff are supportive of 3rd reading being given to this zoning bylaw amendment. With that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. So I'll turn now to council just to see if anyone has any questions regarding this application. I won't be able to see you, kind of seeing you now, so maybe you'll just need to speak. There's everybody.
I have a couple of
Thank you.
questions.
Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Mostly they have to do with the letter that we received from the public from Mr. Chris Moss.
Okay.
And this is more in lines of a comment because there seems to continue to be a misunderstanding in terms of what we can actually accomplish in council. We cannot actually protect natural habitat. We don't have any regulations that actually do that. So though I understand the wish to actually sequester carbon and protect habitat, this zoning application doesn't actually allow us to do that. There was also a question in his correspondence with regards to rainwater systems, and that's a question for staff. I know that in some parts, specifically East Souk, you can actually ask for rainwater catchment systems because there is no water available from the city. I was curious whether or not we had that sort of thing happening, especially in areas, for example, where there is no water. I'm assuming that we do have rainwater catchment, but I'm also assuming there are specific instances where we can actually ask for that, and I'd like some clarification on that in answer to the correspondence.
Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Mr. Powell?
Certainly, with a lot of our developments that are located within the rural areas, the expectation is that servicing be provided by on-site servicing, so well and septic systems. So in these instances, anything that is above and beyond those requirements would be voluntary by the applicant. If there are subdivisions within the community that are incorporating this is usually developer driven as a means, as a marketing tool to address some of these environmental objectives. So at this time, the only expectations in typical rural development is that it be proven that the soils are acceptable for septic, which the health authority has confirmed. And at the time of building permit, that suitable water be provided. So that would be a well system that can accommodate potable water.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor?
Not quite. I could ask for some clarification specifically on rainwater catchment systems. Does our district actually have any of those rules?
So if you're asking specifically about stormwater drainage, those are also parts of the subdivision process.
No, I'm not asking about drainage systems. I'm asking about rainwater catchment. So systems for actually catching water. So in East Souk, where you can't actually drill a well because it's rock, they can actually ask that water be collected in order to provide a development with water. Do we have similar rules within our building bylaws? I'm just trying to determine that.
Certainly. So it has to be proven that there is a suitable source for potable water. So if that's determined at the building permit stage, because that's where it would have to be proven to the residents. If that's deemed to be acceptable, then that could be part of that lot's source for water then.
Okay, so I think for follow-up, because it's not relevant to the rezoning in this case, more to see, what I'm sort of hearing is that there is nothing to really mandate rainwater collection system.
That's correct.
That we have. Okay, thank you. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman? You're on mute.
Okay, hi. Through you to Mr. Bylaw. I noticed in the internal referral comments that Parks and Recreation are asking for the applicant to follow the BMP, Develop with Care, guidelines. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, I'll just find those specific comments.
These are environmental guidelines for urban and rural land development in British Columbia.
Okay, so let's see here. So the reference to the Parks and Environmental Services internal referral, adhere to all recommendations as outlined in the best management practices, develop with care environmental guidelines for urban and rural land development in British Columbia. So in many areas for development, so specifically this one with urban and rural land developments, best practices have been established. So while we don't specifically put conditions on developments at the time of zoning or at a development permit or building permit process, what we ask is that these certain developments can use these best management practices to enhance the area. I'm just trying to consider which ones would be the most applicable based on your question here. Typically, it could be things related to wildlife, vegetation, anything regarding more rural in nature. So obviously in an urban area, more of that natural landscape has been cleared for urban development, where this is kind of that interface with a developing urban neighborhood to the west and this more of a rural character, trying to at least keep as much of that natural landscape intact while recognizing that there is infill development that's occurring on the parcel.
Mm-hmm. So that's good news then in response to Mr. Moss's letter, that there are some environmental guidelines that will be followed, including the district's own. My next question regards this brand new 2-lane road that leads to West Ridge Trails. And actually, I'll withdraw that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bateman. Any other questions from members of council? Okay, seeing none. I'll turn to our corporate officer and just ask if we have members of the public that are registered or available to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had one fellow interested. He was going to call in Mr. Wayne Jolly, but I do not see him joining the meeting. Mr. Jolly, if you're on the meeting, would you please identify yourself? You can go ahead.
So we don't have Mr. Jolly then?
Not receive a response. I think you're good to go.
Okay. So, and then that's it then for any other public comments. So on that note, I will then close the public hearing. Usually I do a call for 3 times, but we know there's no one, so the public hearing is now officially closed. We'll turn back to council here. The recommendation for staff is that council give third reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 797-600-81-2020 to amend the zoning on the property located at 2604 Otter Point Road from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5. And that prior to final adoption of the zoning amendment bylaw number 797-600-81-2020, the owner enters into section 219 covenants to address cash in lieu of $6,000 for affordable housing for residential development, upgrading of an existing park and playground facility, frontage improvements, servicing requirements, statutory rights of way, and other necessary works and services. So I believe those can be read together. So looking for a mover, moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lagenas. Councillor St. Pierre, would you like to speak on this matter?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lagenas, anything as a seconder?
Nope, it's all pretty straightforward.
Okay, anything from any other member of council? Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
Okay, I'll continue with the question that wasn't going to be a question, it was going to be a comment. So given the brand new 2-lane road that is going to lead to Westridge Trails, I'm particularly grateful to the applicant for respecting the wishes and letter of the OCP and the community residential zone objectives and seeking 2 new homes as opposed to possibly seeking an upzoning to a low or medium density multifamily. So thank you to the applicant and well wishes.
Okay.
We also will be seeing a tree protection plan that has been requested by the district. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments from members of council? Seeing none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. So thank you very much, staff and the applicant, for this matter. Okay. So that brings us to item 6, adoption of minutes. So we have minutes of our regular meeting of January the 11th and our special meeting of January 18th. So looking for council to adopt the 2 sets of minutes, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Thank you. Questions or corrections on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Next up is item 7, please. Report of the Chief Administrative Officer. So over to Mr. McInnes, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not have an update report prepared for council this evening.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. You did give us a very fulsome report at our meeting 2 weeks ago, so thank you very much. Item 8 is our public question and comment period. So I'll ask our corporate officer, do we have any members of the public registered to address council at this time?
No, Your Worship, we do not. I will just let you know that we have the applicant for the agricultural subdivision on the line to answer any questions at that time, should council have any.
Okay, so that's good to know. Thank you very much. So that brings us to item 9, which is our consent agenda. The recommendation is that agenda items 9.1 be adopted by general consent. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lagenas. Any comments from members looking to speak? Seeing none, I'll call the question on adoption, please. Or actually receive and file is the appropriate action that will happen. And none opposed, that carries unanimously. Okay, so next up is item 10.1, an ALR subdivision for 6835 Pascoe Road. And as indicated by Ms. Machada, the applicant is standing by for any questions. So on this note, I will turn this over to staff, please, to introduce the item, please.
All right, an application's been received proposing to subdivide land within the agricultural land reserve for the purposes of creating one new lot, which is approximately 3,856.20 square meters in size for an immediate family member to build a new single-family dwelling. The subdivision proposal will be in accordance with Section 514 of the Local Government Act, which enables this type of subdivision when the purpose is to provide a residence for a relative. Here you can see the zoning for the surrounding area. So subject property is approximately 3.13 hectares in size, and of the property used for growing of fruits, it's approximately 0.31 hectares. And the current single-family dwelling, driveway, and garden area use is approximately half a hectare. The property is zoned small-scale agricultural RU3 in the zoning bylaw and is designated agriculture in the OCP. Surrounding land uses include rural residential RU4 and small-scale agriculture RU3. Here you can see just the darker shaded area, the proposed area at the top of the map here. So the protection of capable and suitable farmland throughout the district is necessary for long-term sustainable growth of the community. The proposed subdivision allows for the continued use of the farm with minimal impacts. Agriculture and food security will not be impacted as a result of the subdivision, and therefore it will meet the goals and objectives of the agriculture area of the official community plan. The proposed subdivision is also an example of low-density infill on the fringe of the community residential area. It provides a modest size and rural characteristic style single-family dwelling for a young family in the community related to the current landowners. So the new lot will be used to build a home for relatives of the current property owners. And the area of land proposed for subdivision is accessible from the bottom of Pascoe Road and is not currently being used for agricultural purposes. Creating this new lot would provide opportunities for agriculture and farmland currently vacant and unused. In addition, with the family member proposing to reside on here, they can be close to their other relatives and assist the family with the remaining land in terms of expanding the existing vegetable and fruit area and pursuing opportunities to make agricultural improvements to the land that's not currently being used. For this, staff can support the application and recommend that council forward the application to the Agricultural Land Commission with a recommendation to support the application. With that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bylaw. I'll now turn it back to council just to see if you have any questions first, please. Questions of staff or the applicant. Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead. And I can't see everyone yet, so just after Councillor St. Pierre, you may need to just speak to have everyone go back onto the screen.
Thank you. My question, I guess, would be for the applicants or possibly staff, and that's that why a subdivision as opposed to a secondary building on the same parcel? My understanding is that it's still possible within the ALC regulation to do so, and I'm not sure, but I think we might have more sway at the district level to allow that. So I'm just curious, and my interpretation may be changing because the ground is shifting pretty quick on this stuff. But I'm eager to find out more, and I'll have further comments after that.
Okay, Mr. Bylaw, are you able to answer that question?
I think it would probably be best for the applicant just to perhaps provide that clarity to council and how they determine this their application for this.
Okay, so I'd like to invite Good evening. If you could please just introduce yourselves, just your names, please, and then if you wouldn't mind, please answering the councillor's questions, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nicole Mountain. This is my husband, Jake Peter. We're the applicants of the item. So to answer your question, it's a very good question. We wanted to take, I mean, in our eyes, the more cleaner, smoother approach, whereas just cutting the land and having a portion for us and our family and our goals, and then the remaining stays with my parents. So I spoke a lot with the folks at the Agricultural Land Commission, and they were really supportive of that idea as well. So that's just a personal choice.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions from members of council to either staff or the applicant that is here?
I do have further comments.
Okay, well, I'm looking for questions, and then if there's a recommendation, then we can get comments. If once there's a motion, you can comment, but right now is questions. So Councillor Bateman, please.
So to the applicant, Ms. Mountain, you grew up on this property, I think. Yes,
I did.
and
yeah.
and you intend to put it back to a degree to active use.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about what your plans are? We need more farm gates in this community, you know?
Oh, I know. So yeah, I lived there for, gosh, yeah, several years. My parents had chickens also. So there is mention in the plans about they did have a chicken coop extended onto the barn. So we did chickens. I would love to pick that up again. On my own property at the bottom there. So a chicken coop with chickens would be amazing. I would love to do a vegetable garden and a fruit garden. Those are my plans as it stands. I'm a big dream. Just in case things don't work out, but those are kind of my goals. I helped out a lot with the vegetables and the fruit gardens and the chickens. So I'm just really passionate about preserving the agricultural there. I'm passionate about being there with my family and growing, being there with my new family as well, and growing our own home and that sort of thing. So yes, those are my plans.
Well, best wishes, best soil and souk, I understand. So
yes, thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Other questions from members of council? Okay, well, thank you very much for being available to meet with council tonight in this virtual form. We certainly appreciate your logging in and being able to answer those questions. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me.
And so now I'll turn the matter back to council. The recommendation from our staff is that council forward this request for subdivision PLN 01563 at 6835 Pascoe Road, legally described as Lot 13, Sections 20, 35 and 36, Souk District, and Section 1, Otter District, Plan 23816 to the Agricultural Land Commission with a recommendation for approval. So that's the recommendation from staff. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Okay, moved by Councillor McMath, I'll say, and Councillor Beddoes as a seconder. Councillor McMath, would you like to comment, please?
No, it's very straightforward. Thank you.
Okay, anything from Councillor Beddoes?
Just that it was so refreshing to see a nice young couple able to, possibly afford to live in this community because everything's so expensive. So it was nice, and I'm 100% for it.
Excellent. Other council members wishing to comment on the application? Councillor St. Pierre?
This is just to say that I had reservations when I first started reading the file, but I like the project and I like what they're doing. Having said that, we have a continued issue in terms of, as far as I'm concerned, some kind of policy around when do we subdivide and how often do we subdivide. And I'll be looking forward to getting some clarity on that, maybe through the land use committee, in terms of, what size do we want to go down to in order to actually have enough land to farm. I've heard, 2 acres, there's various other, numbers that are thrown around. I think that this is the appropriate thing to do to get enough people on the land to actually do the farming, because you can't do it with equipment. on that size of parcel. So I do approve and I support, but I'll be looking forward to maybe having something more concrete that council can work for and staff can work from.
Okay, thank you. Other members of council wishing to comment? No, I'll just add my support to this application and wish the applicants hopefully a good outcome from the Agricultural Land Commission, and we'll wait to see how that goes. And in this case, just look forward to seeing this vision realized, and it's lovely that a family can stay together and enjoy the land and enjoy another generation as well on that property. So best of luck to everyone. So on that note, I will call the question on this application. All those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and many thanks to the applicant for joining today. Next up is item 10.2, Sunriver Reservoir Site Expansion. So over to staff, please.
Thank you. So with this one, it's pretty self-explanatory from the report. So there's currently 2 covenants that are registered against the subject property that's of interest to the Capital Regional District. So those 2 covenants are related to further subdivision development in that area. And with the Capital Regional District looking to expand their water reservoir site, these 2 covenants would not be applicable as part of that subdivision process for the new parcel that they're creating. So the request is simply to have the district release those 2 covenants for the parcel that they're going to be creating. So the intent would be through the subdivision application process, the CRD would create this new parcel. It would not have the 2 covenants on that parcel being created, but the 2 covenants would still remain on the remainder of the title for the rest of Sunriver, so that some future time that subdivision does occur in that area, it would be subject to these development requirements. So the CRD is just looking for a clean title to further their water reservoir expansion. That's
Okay.
That's the extent of it.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. The one question I had, which I couldn't quite find, is because there's no addresses and it's related to the existing water reservoir, is it that site then where the current water facility, water reservoir is that's being expanded, or is it somewhere else, like at the top of Sunriver Way in the undeveloped section? Is that the parcel in question?
So we actually just received the subdivision application today, I believe, in discussing this with staff, and so it would be adjacent to the existing site. So
Okay.
it wouldn't be a new location; it would just be an expansion of the current site itself.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Questions from members of council? Okay, just need my glasses here. So the recommendation is that council authorize the release of covenant 6A40569686 and CA6102545, registered against Lot A, Section 32, Souk District Plan VIP 77727, except parts in Plan VIP 7765, VIP 78743, VIP 79134, VIP 79684, VIP 80394, VIP 80698, VIP 87411, and EPP 53708. And do we have a mover for that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Lagenas and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments from members of council? I'll go to Councillor Lagenas first. Is the mover anything? St. Pierre is a seconder. Nope. Okay. Councillor Bateman, you had a comment?
I did have a question, actually. Can I pose a question at this point? And it relates to the
Technically not, because the motion's there, but I'll allow your question to be answered if that helps.
Yeah, so I'm not clear on how big an expansion this is and whether it's designed for is this to serve the next 20 years? Is it designed for existing residential or Sunriver expansion?
Mr. Powell?
I can't answer that specifically. I know it will accommodate the expansion of Sunriver, but I anticipate just with the overall size essentially doubling for landmass. I believe there would be some additional capacity as well, but that's all based on the CRD's plans moving forward. But at least for Sunriver, it certainly would accommodate the additional growth for that area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So seeing no further hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. Anyone opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.3, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Otter Point Road Sidewalks. This is exciting. Over to staff, please.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, through your Worship to the rest of Council, we got an excellent grant opportunity in front of us here. Last minute it came out and we were able to line up the Otter Point project with this grant opportunity to fund approximately 90% of this project. Total project costs are sitting at approximately $2.1 million. And this will move this project within the 5-year financial plan from 2024 to 2021. As previously indicated, it is going to have northbound and southbound sidewalk completion as well as bike lane completion. It will include the paving and resurfacing of all the travel lanes because of the adjustment of centerline. And we are looking for council support for staff to make this grant application and for council to commit to the ineligible costs, which are lined up with the paving lanes, which are ineligible for this grant for the travel lanes. And we're looking for district commitment to $274,000, which is the known amount right now based on our 85% design estimates for the ineligible costs. The actual overrun costs, if any, would not be known or realized until the time of tender or in time of notification of the grant success where they identified any ineligible project costs in addition to this amount. So for now, we are looking for council support to go forward with this funding application. And that council supports the project and commits to any associated ineligible costs as well as any project cost overruns. And staff would bring a subsequent report back to council for consideration following the tendering of the project if successful with this grant opportunity.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Carter, for that that introduction. So a question that I have is for this particular grant, is this a provincial grant or is it like a federal provincial grant opportunity? And I'm just asking that question just because I know we're waiting on the outcome of a number of different grants. Partly, I believe, we're waiting for the federal approval. So I'm just wondering if this is something that is done just by the province, so a quicker turnaround, or are we going to be waiting another like a year or two? Hopefully not, but.
Excellent question, Your Worship. So this is a provincial and federal grant. It was released for the COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream. So it was an immediate grant opportunity on short notice. The province and the federal component are anticipating a turnaround of notification by March, April 2021. And one of the requirements of the grant is to have the project substantially completed in construction in 2021, which we have put a target date for October 31st. Okay,
that's fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, other questions from members of council? Any questions? Councillor St. Pierre, then Bateman.
Just a very quick one. Seems like we should be able to use the COVID relief funding money that we've received to pay for the balance, the ineligible costs. Is that actually the case? Just curious.
Through your worship to Councillor St. Pierre, I'd have to confirm with Ms. Gray. We would expect we could use that fund, but we would look at potential other adjustments as previously discussed. We have a commitment of approximately $240,000 towards the intersection upgrades at Charters and Drennan, which we are looking at going into design for this year. It was sort of a last minute decision working with the ministry to look at delaying the possible construction of that more in alignment with the connector road so that we wouldn't put any more pressure on Highway 14. So funds may be able to be reallocated as part of the 2021 committed funds. But again, Ms. Gray and myself would bring a subsequent report to council following tender when we knew exact cost amounts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, thank you for the report and being so on the case with this. The one thing, it's going to change that whole section of the road quite dramatically. I'm really interested in the separated boulevard for the first 130 meters, traveling up from the highway up towards Wadham's Way. Can you tell me more about that?
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, yeah, there is going to be a separated boulevard that's put in place with the sidewalk there. Essentially what's going to happen is we have substantial storm works that are going to have to go in construction with this. So there will be a small boulevard separation, and most of the storm works and infrastructure will get put in place underneath that and tying into the ministry's highway intersection, right at the intersection of Highway 14 and Otter Point.
And when you say boulevard, you're not meaning a median between the two lanes of traffic?
No, it would be a separate sort of grass area boulevard that goes from the sort of curb line, in between the curb line and the sidewalk.
Okay. All right. Should be very nice. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of council? So the recommendation here, and I'll just ask Ms. Mushata, can these two items be read together, moved together?
Yes, your worship, they can.
Thank you. That staff submit a grant funding application for Otter Point Road Active Transportation Project, sidewalks and bike lanes through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream, and that council supports the projects and commits to any associated ineligible costs and project cost overruns. So look for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Councillor St. Pierre, any comments as the mover?
No, super happy to see our transportation master plan being put into effect so quickly and so well. Really thrilled about this money being used this way and the opportunities for active transportation.
Great. Councillor Logans?
This is exciting.
I'm nodding because I fully agree, but I didn't want to interrupt. Other members of council have any comments? I think I'll just express and just add to what the mover and the seconder said is this is very exciting. I just thank you staff for taking advantage of the opportunity of the grant and also putting our newly adopted master plan right into work right away. This is really exciting, and let's hope we have a good outcome with this, and we'll be looking for a report back as soon as possible. So thank you so much. So I'll call the question, please. Or was that a comment, Councillor Bateman? I now have a mix of hands. Okay, we're all good. Let's do it again. All those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? Councillor McMath, are you opposed, or is that just a slow hand? You're in favor.
Just the leg.
Okay, just a leg. Good. Carried unanimously. That is excellent. Okay. Item number 11, Council Remuneration and Benefits Amendment Bylaw. So the recommendation, or what's here in front of us, is that Council adopt the bylaw cited as Council Remuneration and Benefits Amendment Bylaw number 806-740-01 2021. So look for a mover, please, and a seconder. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor McMath. Any further comments from either councillor? Anyone have anything? Nope. Call the question. All those in favor, please. And anyone? Okay, that's everyone in favor. Thank you very much. Next up is 11.2, Building Bylaw number 780, here in front of us for third reading. So turn this over to staff, please, because we do have a bit of a report here.
Thank you. So this is returning to council. You'll recall back at the end of last year, November 23rd, this received 3 readings. However, third reading was rescinded, and there was some discussion just surrounding engagement and step codes and things of that nature. So we're bringing this back forward tonight after consideration of how we could bring the building bylaw into effect, but at the same time address the concerns surrounding step code. And so what's being proposed is that the dates for step code implementation within the building bylaw will mirror that of what the mandated provincial dates are to be. So that means that on the next year, 2022, Part 3 buildings will be Step 2 minimum requirement, Part 9 will be Step 3 minimum requirement. And then starting in 2027, going up until 2032, Part 3 buildings will be Step 3 requirement, and Part 9 buildings Step 4 requirement. And then lastly, again, in alignment with the province and a target for full implementation of STEP code by 2032, our bylaw will require a minimum of Step 4 for Part 3 buildings and Step 5 for Part 9 buildings. So we felt this was the best way to address some of the concerns in the community regarding STEP code. And so at this point, it will just follow those mandated requirements. Additionally, we just removed that initial force and effect date that was originally in Part 9 of the proposed bylaw of January 1st, 2021, to have that removed, as that date has since been passed. And so at the time of the bylaw being given third reading, that would be the point of when it comes into effect. And then lastly, the Climate Action Committee recommendations. This was discussed at the December 14th meeting of council, and it surrounded single-family dwellings having the EV chargers and solar roof panels. This was discussed amongst staff, and it was determined that at the time that the Land Use and Development Committee were to be established, that this item would be brought forward for further discussion, just in terms of appropriateness of where this requirement, if to be implemented, would reside, building bylaw, zoning bylaw, or a separate bylaw altogether. And so we just felt that would be better for further discussion on the matter and not further prevent delay in the adoption of the building bylaw. So with that, that is the additional direction provided in the recommendation for this report for council's consideration. So if that is acceptable, those are the changes being brought forward tonight, with staff recommending third reading being given to the building bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulo. I'll turn it to members of council for any questions of staff. We had a discussion last year, and then this is the follow-up second report on this item, but I'll look for questions. Councillor McMath and Bateman, please.
I just wanted to say thank you to staff for listening to the community and working with that feedback and aligning the STEP code with the province's timeline, given the times that we're going through right now. So it's not a question, just a compliment, just a thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bateman, please.
Okay, yes, I had, through you to Mr. Paulo, I note that in the documentation of the building bylaw virtual Q&A, which happened back in October, staff stated that STEP code incentives of various kinds will be explored for our building community. So how are we going to move forward with exploring those incentives? Would that happen through the Land Use and Development Committee?
Certainly, they would be an ideal group to discuss that with, as well as just reviewing what other municipalities are exploring. And of course, if the province is to come out with any incentives, how we can adapt and promote those incentives as well. But we certainly want to utilize the Land Use and Development Committee as much as possible for matters such as this once that committee is formed.
Okay, thank you. So at that same Q&A, someone asked about the STEP code's impact on housing affordability. And the reply is that there is currently no data that would lead to concerns of adverse effects to housing costs for the consumer. I'm curious, that was back in October. Is this still the case? No great data?
Well, there is data available to suggest that the cost for implementing STEP code is not as great as it was once believed a few years back. And so that was where some of the concerns were coming from. And you know, with the Canadian Home Builders Association, they had, I think it was somewhere over 170 members write in and share their information. And this was municipalities, builders, and many agencies. And the data was becoming very supportive of the STEP code process for costs. And so that's what led to not having as much concern as it was back in 2018.
Okay, that's good news. And finally, when we first started talking about the STEP code in 2019, we were led to believe there was a shortage of certified energy advisors on the South Island. And these are key people in this whole process. Is this still a problem, a shortage of energy advisors?
That concern has not been expressed to our building department. And with some of the developments that had been planned in anticipation of a January 1st adoption date for the building bylaw, we have received some building plans that have included the energy advisors support for those. So certainly those have not presented a challenge with those submissions that we have received so far.
Great, good news all around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bateman. Other comment, or pardon me, other questions from members of council? Okay, so there's two items here for council to resolve on. They do need to be separate, so I'm going to break them up here. And the first one is that council give third reading to building bylaw number 780/2020 as amended. So I'll look for a mover, perhaps. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any further comment on third reading? No, I'll call the question. All those in favor of third, please. Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The second part here is that council directs staff to request the Land Use and Development Committee consider how additional climate action goals could be included in the land use process. Great idea. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Lagenas. Any questions? This is where we would get some good policy recommendations. We could look at incentivizing the program and see what may work. It's a great avenue for that to be explored. Okay, I'll call a question. All those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up is item 11.3, fees and charges bylaw number 762/2020. So this fairly straightforward report, but I'll turn it over to staff. Just if there's anything you'd like to add to this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is just to accompany the building bylaw that was just received third reading. This is requested for first, second, and third. The annual parking pass fees for the public boat launch have also been included. And there is a new fee being added under building for the alternative solution examination of requests for alternatives to building code requirements. Don't have any more sorry. And security deposit fees have also been included for building permits.
Okay. Any questions from members of council? Okay, so from staff, Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
Yeah, I might as well jump in. So I'm really curious about these alternate solutions to building code requirements. So this is, can you explain that through you to Mr. Powell? Can you give me some examples, perhaps, of what an alternative solution might
look like? So I probably can't provide a specific.
It's not. Sorry, Mr. Paulo. Councillor Bateman, I'm just going to call your question out of order. I mean, we're here specifically to talk about the fees and charges. So I think if that's something you would like more information on, we would need to generate sort of a different discussion, because what is in front of us is the fees and charges bylaw.
Understood. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation here is that council give first, second, and third reading to the fees and charges bylaw number 772/752-01/2020. So look for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor Lagenas. Thank you. Anything to add, Councillor Beddoes, as the mover? Comment?
No, pretty straightforward.
Okay, Councillor Lagenas, anything?
Nope, let's do it.
Okay, anything from anyone else? Pretty straightforward. All those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? Okay. I'm going to say that those were all hands in favor because I didn't look for the opposing hands yet. So that carries unanimously. Okay, next up is 11.4, zoning amendment bylaw for 6671 Wadham's Way. So a next step in the process here, but I'll turn this over to staff, please.
Thank you. I'll just get my screen shared here. Right. So the district has initiated a rezoning application for the eastern half of Lot A at 6671 Wadham's Way. And the proposal includes an amendment to the east half of the property from the Community Facilities P2 zone to the proposed CD15, a comprehensive development zone, for the purposes of accommodating the proposed expanded uses. The current zoning includes community, civic, assembly, and institutional uses appropriate to the west half of the site. However, the east half of the site requires a zoning amendment to allow for these expanded uses, which would include multifamily residential, limited commercial options, along with institutional uses. A comprehensive development zone is the best fit for the site in order to meet the community's objectives as articulated in a Lot A design charrette report for this community-owned asset. Here's a zoning map just showing the surrounding zoning and the subject property. So the property itself is approximately 2.13 hectares in size and approximately 1.2 hectares to be affected by this proposed rezoning. The property is well situated for pedestrian and cycling options via the multi-use trail on Wadham's Way. The neighborhood is currently a mix of residential, commercial, and institutional uses, complementing the CD zoning that's being proposed. The rationale for the rezoning is that the property is designated town center within our official community plan, where there's a strong support for high-density residential development, a wide range of housing options, and affordable and easily accessible residential units. The proposed rezoning is in keeping with the vision of furthering town center revitalization, promotion of mixed-use development, and a strong civic presence located in Sauk's town center. Rezoning this property to a CD zone will position the district for many opportunities to redevelop and continue to energize the north end of the town center area. And with that, staff are bringing forward this application as a result of the 2019 Lot A charrette, which included many recommendations that form this proposed zoning amendments for the east half of the site. The CD15 zone incorporates new commercial uses, including indoor amusement facility, art gallery, bakery, commercial exhibit, commercial school, health services, personal services, office space, and retail. Staff are recommending that multifamily residential units be permitted above the first story, where the building fronts a roadway, in order to activate the street level and improve the pedestrian experience. Staff are also recommending the provision of limited home-based business for those residential units. In the CD zone, staff are introducing the requirement for a minimum height of 2 stories with a maximum of 6 stories, as seen elsewhere in the town center. Lot A represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to develop a property for the community with the density requirements and design elements that the community would like to see. Staff are confident that the minimum height restriction of 2 stories will help to achieve the expected intensity on the site, as well as to use district-owned lands efficiently and strategically. In terms of the setbacks proposed for the site, a more generous setback is detailed for areas adjacent to existing single-family neighborhoods. The proposed 4.5 meter setback will allow appropriate separation of uses, which will be complemented by enacting official community plan design guidelines for vegetative buffering in the site design. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed zone provides a balanced approach to achieving community goals while allowing the expanded uses to achieve a vibrant town center. Staff are supportive of first and second reading of the proposed bylaw and suggest moving forward with the public hearing process. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paulo. Okay, so we have a report here in the staff report, both verbal and written. We'll look for members of council if there's any questions, please. Questions on the item. So Councillor St. Pierre, then McMath, please.
Just two quick questions. First, I appreciate the focus on built form and integration with the streetscape, so that's really nice. The two questions are, with regards to the live-work dwellings, how would the new zoning support live-work dwellings? And I was just curious, this may have been answered in a previous meeting, but why is the zoning for the last portion of Lot A also not being included in this? I think this was previously answered, but just refresh me, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulo.
So one of the ideas with the live-work dwellings was taking a look at opportunities that if there could be that separate access, so that it could be its own kind of dedicated work location, but obviously also the opportunity to reside, so that there could kind of be a form of separation within that area, but that still people could utilize the Lot A area and have this type of unique type of development, creating that civic center idea and promoting a live-work opportunity, which we don't typically have in many other places within the community. And to your other question, I believe it was regarding the public plaza area that would be the southwest quadrant of Lot A. That would be south of the library, if I'm correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. So the reason that area is not being included is that that area is looked at as something that we could likely still accomplish under the current zoning of P2. The reason for the easterly half coming forward as the comprehensive development zone is because of the additional commercial and residential uses that aren't currently available within the institutional P2 zoning, as well as adding additional regulations such as the minimum 2-story requirement as well. So it was providing a little bit more opportunity, which was a direct result of the Lot A charrette as well, which at the end of the report also includes a draft bylaw for this very zone, which we've used as the template in designing this.
Okay, you to follow up? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, I do. I'm curious because I think that the public plaza included room for a farmer's market and potentially food carts, but I'm assuming that would be allowable under P2 then? Could you please confirm that for me?
Yes, our initial intentions was that it would be something that that could be included. Certainly when we do get to that stage for development, we'll have to take a closer look and if necessary, based on that proposal, including something that's perhaps a bit different than what the charrette had anticipated, we may need to come forward with an amendment, but that's not our intentions right now. It's with the expectation that the charrette would be followed and that the P2 zone could accommodate the use.
Okay. Councillor McMath, questions?
I'm still a little bit unclear as to why we have to rezone it at all. Because if I look at the institutional use for P2 zoning, it covers everything. So I'm unclear as to why we're rezoning it. And part of the feedback that I've been hearing is local, like property owners and business owners, feel like the rezoning is just an opportunity for the district to have the opportunity to sell that land at a higher value, which would put them in competition with their pieces. And especially right now when local businesses are struggling to rent those spaces and that property is difficult to sell, rezoning it, it's added like another pressure to those groups in the community. So one piece is just confirming that we're not going into competition with those owners. And then the other piece is just an explanation as to why we're rezoning it all, because P2 institutional use, so facility established to serve a social, recreational, educational, or other public purpose, and includes but is not limited to arena, armory, cemetery, college, community care facility, community center, community hall, fire hall, hospital, library. It goes on and on and on. It's not limited to any of those things, but it's anything that serves a social, recreational, educational, or other public purpose. So I still am unclear as to why we're rezoning.
So,
okay, good question.
I can start with that question first. So the reason that we're rezoning is that one, it stems from the Lot A charrette and what the recommendations were, which is to include additional uses that currently aren't available within the P2 zone. So the P2 zone includes assembly use, cemetery, concession, country market, horticulture, institutional use, and places of worship. So things of a residential nature are not included within that zone. So that primarily is one, as well as the expanded commercial use opportunities.
So where in that institutional use does it say that we're not allowed to have any of those pieces?
A residential use such as a multifamily development is not considered an institutional use if it's like any other multifamily development within our community.
So if you have affordable housing or senior center, senior living, you don't think that's covered in P2?
For a specific proposal that's underway right now, it could fit within that, but this is for the entirety of the site, which also accounts for other residential uses that might not necessarily be affordable in nature.
So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, this is for the entire easterly half, so there is the opportunity for the inclusion of other residential uses that might be at market rate, as well as any of the other commercial spaces that we're encouraging at the ground floor level of these developments. So there may be components of a care facility or affordable housing, but also within that development itself, it might include office space or other commercial type uses that the institutional P2 zone doesn't currently accommodate.
Okay, but your last piece, residential, I understand, and perhaps I would be more inclined to consider the rezoning if we had a recommendation or a suggestion or something coming forward that included that, and that's why this request was coming through. But for example, like you have an art gallery, which is a business, and that's included in the P2, so why would a commercial space not be allowed?
So I'm just looking here in the P2 zone. So our art gallery is not specifically listed as a use in there, but we have office space, personal services, retail, so that there's a much larger expanded category that we're including for commercial uses. So the P2 zone doesn't really accommodate commercial use. That's the benefit of this comprehensive development zone, is to include those expanded commercial uses that would support the Lot A and surrounding land uses, and those who are going to be potentially residing in that area.
I think, yeah, I would, but you, granted, you're much more educated in this than I, but I read that as anything that benefits the community can be incorporated into the P2 zoning. So having economical development in a commercial space benefits the community, like therefore to me it's covered by P2 zoning.
I don't believe that's the intent of how that area reads. The principal uses that are listed in the P2 zone are the ones that we would be going through to determine if it would fall within that category. And certainly we have commercial zones that are more appropriate to accommodate those. And so we're directing those commercial uses into the easterly half under this comprehensive development zone crafted through the Lot A charrette.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my personal opinion is like that. I wouldn't base all of my opinions on that charrette or my choices. And then the other piece, going back to community concerns, could you just comment on that?
Certainly. So the district is the landowner of this property, and as we proceed, there have been agreements with different agencies to establish a lease of the lands to construct whatever use they are proposing. So the intent would not be for the district to be in an opportunity to sell off this land, but more so to be able to foster the community development opportunities as the landowner, ensuring that the vision is actually fulfilled going through a district initiated process.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Other questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman.
Okay, I'll follow up on Councillor McMath's comments and questions, and I do have a question here, but just to remind council that back in April 2017, there was quite a bit of pushback to an original attempt to rezone Lot A from P2 to CTC. And I found an open letter to suit council from landowner Jeff Zegay, concerned that this rezoning would shift the focus of the commercial heart of the town center away from the waterside area defined in the town center plan. And council of the day agreed very quickly and let the zoning lie as it was. So I guess we need to, so my question then, does this rezoning shift the focus of the commercial heart of the town center away from from where it is planned to be?
Absolutely not. If anything, it would further support it. Mainly with commercial retail type developments, any commercial type development, the more you have, the more it encourages further development of the area. So we start to grow beyond just a heart and start developing actual corridors of development in our community. So this would certainly be a key strategic location for supporting our town center and our waterfront area by being kind of a north anchor in a sense, with obviously the ongoing construction of the library site, potential for seniors housing development and other types of uses that have been proposed through the Lot A charrette. It makes a great north location for this in support of everything else that would further kind of trickle down through a corridor style development.
Okay, thank you. The next question regards the definition of retail that we're using here. It is limited only by square footage, 10,000, what was that? No, wait a sec. How big was it? 1,000 meters squared. And so that leaves the field open to a chain business coming in, a business that perhaps is better suited to other. I'm curious, what were considerations given to defining retail in a more exact fashion?
We certainly have to work within the confines of how land use specifically defines a use as opposed to other mechanisms. So it was felt that by using the size requirement for single retail, other than grocery not exceeding 1,000 square meters, was one way to identify that the whole site itself wouldn't necessarily be taken up with one large commercial entity, but more so just something smaller of a supportive nature, and that there are other tracts of land within the town center area that might be more appropriate to develop larger scale commercial developments, and that they would be located there.
Okay. Yeah, I think something like a boutique retail or something that was specific to the mass of homeowners. Well, I don't know. My question, one last question, is the use of that phrase, other than a grocery. That suggests a grocery would be allowed on this property, does it not?
It potentially could be the case. It doesn't specify specifically those pieces, but this is more geared towards recognizing that if there is existing grocery use to the south within the mall area. So overall for this area, if there's other complementary uses, as long as it's something other than grocery, it would not exceed the 1,000 square meters, as you said, in a boutique type fashion. If some people were to envision that type of use being proposed.
Mr. McInnes, do you have a comment?
I do, Your Worship. Just restrictions on use could come through the lease agreement, because my understanding is that the district does not want to fee simple sell any of this land. Most of the uses will be done through lease. And we do have in the, for example, the draft lease that we have with Searchin, under 10.2 of that lease, we do have language around restricting uses. And just further to the comments by other council members, the P2 zone has residential use, dwelling use as an accessory use, and it's limited to just 1 unit per lot. So that's part of the reason why the P2 will not work with the proposal that council has supported from Searching. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity, Mr. McInnes. And also the district is the landowner here. So we would have a say as to future potential tenants, or the council of the day would. And there's also a very public process that council would need to undertake should it want to subdivide and sell off any section of this land. And I just want to just respond to Councillor Bateman's about the concern back in 2017 versus now. At that time, the library didn't even have a lease with the district for Lot A. There was no plans or confirmed plans from the library to construct on that property. It was basically, we have a parcel of land, and there was chatter at the time that the district should upzone it and sell it to generate revenue, which was abandoned. There was no policy introduced, there was no action, there was no notice of motion from any councillor to actually investigate that. Roll forward to now, we have gone through a charrette process, and whilst it may not be perfect, it was done pre-COVID in a time where we could actually do some engagement. Of course, there's always way to improve, but it was lengthy. We have a deal with the library. They're building now. So we are developing the parcel, and we do have a vision that we're actually working towards. None of that was in place previously. So the concern raised then, I don't feel is current anymore, given all the work that council has undertaken since that time. So at that time, I didn't support rezoning because why do we have the land, and what would we, like, what purpose would we rezone to when there's no impetus to do anything? Whereas now we've heard just very clearly from Mr. McInnes, we kind of have to. We have supported Searchin's proposal, and we have identified some items that we want to see on the land. I would like to have it called something different than Lot A, but we'll get to that at a future time. It's Lot A is just everywhere. Anyway, other questions from members of council? Okay, so there's a suggested recommendation here, and this can all be read together. So the recommendation is that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 801 600-82 2021 to rezone the eastern half of 6671 Wadham's Way from community facilities zone P2 to a comprehensive development zone CD15, and that council authorize staff to schedule a public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 801 600-82 2021 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. I'm just going to add that the other thing the public hearing does is it does enable us to inform the community of our plans. It's one way to, again, share that this is what our intent is here. Any other speakers on this item? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.5, I understand that Councillor Lagenas would like to declare a conflict on this. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, the applicant is a member of my immediate family, so I'm going to recuse myself on this one.
Okay, so Ms. Mushada, what is the best way for Councillor Lagenas to step out of a virtual meeting? Like, do we put him in the lobby, in the waiting room? Or...
Yeah, I mean, unless you wanted to text him when you wanted him to rejoin the meeting, I don't have that contact information with me at the moment. Somebody else would have to do that, or I suppose that we could just ask him and trust him to turn the volume off and then give him a wave when we're ready to have him join the meeting.
I can just text him.
Okay, so Councillor Lagenas, can you leave the meeting then? And then we'll text you when we wrap up then.
Yep.
Just be on standby. Okay, thank you. I think that's probably the best bet is to step out into the virtual lobby. So thank you. We'll just wait for you to exit. Okay, that was easy. Okay, so over to staff, please, on item 11.5, a zoning amendment bylaw for 2109 Mowich Drive.
you. We've received a zoning bylaw amendment application for rezoning a property located at 2109 Mowich Drive from rural residential RU4 zone to neighborhood rural residential RU5 for the purposes of creating 2 new lots on the subject property. This map here is just showing the zoning of the subject property and surrounding area. Property itself is just a little bit over half a hectare and is located in the North Casinos neighborhood. There's an existing home and a few accessory buildings on the property that will remain. The surrounding neighborhood is a mix of rural, residential, and agricultural uses. Generally, the surrounding neighborhood is treated with clearings for house sites and small agricultural operations that operate in the area. This rezoning application is requesting that the property be rezoned from the RU4 to RU5 zone. And this will provide a parcel with a minimum lot size of 2,500 square meters and enable the creation of that second new lot on the property. This site plan here is just showing how that proposal would look. So lot A being to the north and lot B with the existing dwelling to the south. Section 4.7.3 of the official community plan requires that a minimum of 10% of the total of any proposed bare land or strata single family subdivision have affordable housing. The applicants acknowledge this and has volunteered to contribute $3,000. Staff support cash in lieu as proposed by the applicants, and the RU5 zone requires a site-specific analysis of the soils for properties outside of the sewer specified area. The analysis for this property determined suitable soil conditions for on-site sewage system, and with these proposals, the health authority was contacted and stated that there was no objections to the proposed rezoning application. As part of the application, the applicant provided a rationale for the rezoning amendment request, stating that the piece of land they are proposing to subdivide meets the minimum criteria based on an RU5 gateway residential zoning with a 2,500 square meter minimum for low density residential development. The proposed subdivision layout creates 1 new lot with the remaining portion to the south with the existing dwelling, and it will have no negative environmental impacts and also aligns with the existing residential neighborhood of single-family dwellings on Mowich Drive. Staff are supportive of first and second reading to amend the zoning to RU5 and to proceed with the scheduling of a public hearing for public input on the proposal. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paulo. So I'll just turn to council now for any questions on this application, please. No questions? Okay. This means that the report has answered all the questions, Mr. Paulo, so thank you. The recommendation here is, and this can all be read together, is that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 807-600-87-2021 to amend the zoning on the property located at 2109 Mowich Drive from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5, and that council authorize staff to schedule a public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 807-600-87-2021 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act, and that prior to final adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 807-600-87-2021, the owner enter into section 219 covenants to address frontage improvements, servicing requirements, statutory right-of-ways, park maintenance, cash in lieu in the amount of $3,000 for 10% affordable housing for residential developments and other necessary works and services. So we'll look for a mover and a seconder. So moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments, Councillor McMath? Okay, Councillor St. Pierre? No. Other councillors wish to comment? Nope. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. So if we could, maybe what we'll do is take just a short wellness break of say 3 minutes while Councillor Lagenas rejoins the meeting, and we can just refreshes accordingly. So I'm just going to turn my camera off. Oops, I muted myself. See you in 3. Thank you.
Just taking a 3-minute break, Councillor Lagenas. They'll be back in about 2 more minutes.
Okay, I thought everyone abandoned me. Seems like we were just here.
The squares have moved though. Oh, there's Councillor Beddoes returning. Okay, that's great, everybody. Welcome back. And that brings us to item 11.6, Officer and Delegation of Authority Amendment Bylaw. So fairly straightforward report here. However, I'm going to turn it to staff just for anything further to add. Over to staff, please.
Worship, nothing further to add, just confirming that this amendment is to bring the Delegation of Authority bylaw in line with the recently passed purchasing policy. As noted in the report, the mayor will still sign off any agreements regarding the acquisition and disposition of municipal lands and any agreements between the district and other levels of government. Would just, I think, make better use of the mayor's time and allow us to expedite business.
And I think what I'll also add to this is that there are, with the purchasing policy, there are other checks and balances in place to ensure sort of the integrity. We're stewards of the district's assets, and there's policy and parameters in place to ensure sort of the safekeeping of all those aspects. So we're not, by me not signing off on something, It doesn't mean that we're abdicating any abdication of any responsibility. It's just there's other checks and balances in place now. Questions from members of council? Okay, so the recommendation here is that council give first, second, and third reading to the Officers and Delegation of Authority Amendment Bylaw number 810 672-03 2021. And I'll look for a mover by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lagenas. Any further comment from either councillor as the mover and the seconder? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question, please. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. There is no new business that I'm aware of. So that brings us into our correspondence requiring action items. So the first one is 13.1 LGLA 2021 Leadership Forum. So I brought this forward here. Typically the Leadership Forum is held in Richmond in February of every year. Last year, several members of councillors attended along with myself. In previous years, different members of council came. However, attending this forum is not covered by our travel and expense policy, whereas items like UBCM, FCM, AVIC are. So I thought because there's so much, it is a virtual forum, that I would just bring it here. And we've just found out the forum is full. Okay. Did any of you registered? So,
if I may, Your
haven't.
Worship, no, I do not believe that we had any council interest, but we went to look at it today and the registrations were closed as I believe it's been oversubscribed.
well, I guess that's good news for the LGLA, but I'm sorry that any of you who had wanted to attend may have missed it. But I can check to see if you are interested. We could contact, it's virtual, so it's not like there is a lack of seating room. I know that some information went out and we could see. Is
I
this
would be
something
interested in attending again.
okay, and Councillor St. Pierre and Councillor Bateman. Okay, so yeah, and I'm attending already. I'm a board member of the LGLA and one of the moderators for one of the events. So it's a hybrid mix of real time and recorded. So the session that I was done, the majority of my session was already recorded, but there's going to be commentary that's going to be live. So there's sort of a blended mix here and different pieces. So Ms. Machada, would you require a motion then that I'm thinking something along the lines that council directs staff to inquire with the LGLA to see if registration could still be made possible for 3 members of council? Something like that? Would that be a resolution that would be needed?
I think we could scale it back a little bit, but I think it's more about council authorizing. I know they're small, but the attendance fees, as they're not currently permitted under our purchasing or our travel and expense policy.
So perhaps then it would be something that council directs staff, that council approve the registration fees to the LGLA 2021 Leadership Forum for Councillor Lagenas, Councillor St. Pierre, and Councillor Bateman. Something like that.
Yep, that'll work. Okay.
So do we have a mover for that item? Moved by Councillor Lagenas and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. So we'll find out. And then in this way, the permission, should this motion pass, then the ability for council to attend will be in place and the funding would be allocated from the council travel fund, I believe. Ms. Machada, then to Councillor McMath.
Wanting to confirm if that would come, yep, from the council travel fund. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McMath.
I just wanted to comment that a lack of attendance doesn't dictate a lack of interest.
Of course.
Councillor Logan's and myself work probably more than full time in our other positions. And so sometimes we're just not able to attend all the functions, and this being one of them.
I completely understand that, Councillor McMath. I mean, in previous times, I've only attended one of these forums for that exact collision with schedules, and it's during weekdays, and so forth. So we I totally get that. And thank you for sharing that. And totally respect where you're coming from there. Well, we'll debrief you. I'm sure members of council would gladly take as many hours as you have available to brief you on what was shared and learned at your convenience. Okay. So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. So we'll see how this goes. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 13.2, implementing a province-wide ban on anticoagulant rodenticides. Over to Councillor Bateman, who requested this be withdrawn.
Yeah, withdrawn from the correspondence package, and
yes.
The letter in question is from the City of North Vancouver asking the province to explore a province-wide ban on these rodenticides that we've discussed here at Council back in September. So I did ask to put this on the agenda because last week I've received a couple of emails from Souk residents who were miffed is one word for it. They'd received the newsletter from the BC SPCA that listed municipalities that were taking serious action over these rodenticides that are killing raptors, owls, cats, and even poisoning children in some rare but still dangerous instances. Souk was not included on that list of municipalities, which was an oversight since, as you'll all recall, we did very promptly and directly back in September in response to a whole series of letters from the public, formalized the district staff practice of not using these heavy toxins and instead using traps and more humane ways to deal with rodents on municipal property. So anyway, I wrote the SPCA's Dr. Dubois, who is Langford born and loves Souk, and she quickly has now added the district to the list of municipalities doing the right thing. And I just thought tonight I would suggest that the district support the City of North Vancouver's call for a province-wide ban, and that we write the Environment Minister Heyman and share our own actions and call for that provincial ban. And I'd be happy to draft up a letter for the mayor's signature.
Okay, so I think the motion, or Ms. Mushata, I see your hand is up.
Sorry, that's from last time. Please ignore.
Okay, sorry. So the resolution or a motion then, Councillor Bateman, would be that council write a follow-up, that council follow up with the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy and write a letter regarding our position on the anticoagulant rodenticides.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Would that, okay, so that's what Councillor Bateman is moving. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Anything, will that motion suffice, Ms. Mushata? Okay, any other comments from members of council? Sort of a follow-up on our advocacy items last year. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 14, council verbal reports. Verbal reports from members of council. Who would like to go first? Councillor Beddoes, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, just give you a little update as talk down at Sea Park again today. We have a meeting tomorrow, but Steve Kadoki was saying that there's a great deal of pressure from the public for more access. So he's been working real hard to balance what he can do with the health regulations. But the public is very anxious to get back into business, but we're sort of still stymied by the regulations. And we'll have a much more in-depth report tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beddoes. It's a tough time, but the cases aren't looking great for the island. Councillor Logans, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have nothing to report, but I've decided in moments like this, I'm going to send out thank yous to some of the staff that have been highlighted this week. I'm going to miss some people, but I do want to say thanks to all the frontline staff that have provided in-person services for all of our residents during the pandemic. Also to Christina Moog for jumping seamlessly into the highly anticipated role of communications coordinator. I'm sure that we're keeping you very busy. Mr. Carter and Mr. Paulo, I'm always impressed with how you communicate with the public. Very comprehensive, professional, informative, and very helpful to our residents. And I'll have more next time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Logans. That's very nice to hear. And we all echo and support those sentiments as well. So bravo to everyone. Other members of council. Councillor Lagenas, go ahead.
Yeah, so we had the inaugural meeting of the Community ECDEV Committee. It went really well. I'm impressed with all of the members of the committee and looking forward to having some great things come out of that group. And that's about all for now.
Thank you, Councillor Lagenas. Other councillors? Councillor Bateman.
Okay, I've got lots to say, but I'll limit it in an
You have
effort
5
to
minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I'll use 2. I had my first meeting as council appointee to the newly restocked Climate Action Committee. This is like the Community Economic Development Group. There's a really solid group of members. Bernie Klassen, who's from Zero Waste Souk and organizer of the repair cafes. He's the chairperson. Steve Unger from Viridian Energy and Inishog Farm is the vice chair. Councillor St. Pierre joined us last week to pass the torch and fill us in on all that the previous committee had achieved, which was a great deal. So we've got some work ahead of us, very early days, so I'll share again when we meet again. I attended, I'll skip that one. The Souk age-friendly committee meeting happened. Our numbers were very limited because this was the morning after the big storm, windstorm, and we were all, a lot of people had their power knocked out, but it was a great discussion. I learned a few things and I'll share those. The application for the affordable seniors housing on Lot A went to BC Housing on January 14th, and Searchin expects to hear back about that in the spring. They also have the Canada Infrastructure Grant submission for the Elders Complex in the works, and that isn't likely to be decided until the late summer. I also learned that the lease on the homeless shelter has been extended to March 31st. The Souk Region Volunteer Centre is marking its 10th anniversary this year, and there's a burst of activity with a new survey and plans for a post-COVID volunteer renaissance here in the Canada's capital of volunteers, according to Elita. And lots of appreciation for the district's renewed efforts to secure enhanced roadside testing opportunities in Souk now that the testing period has ended. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Over to Councillor St. Pierre.
I was going to mention also attending the Climate Action Committee, fantastic committee. I was glad to see that they're also doing, I guess what we did, which was what do you want to see in the next 6 months? What do you want to see in the next year? And some great comments from all of the members. So looking forward to some great stuff out of that committee. I also attended the CRV Water Commission meeting. The Water Commission has approved a scaled back infrastructure upgrade to some of its conduits that are not in danger of failing just yet, but are certainly in need of an upgrade. The project was scaled back because funding did not actually come through from grants as expected, given that there was an invitation to bring in the grant proposal, but we'll see how that goes in the future. They're well positioned with design work, and we know all about that now in case new grant opportunities come up.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Councillor McMath, any comments? Nope, Councillor McMath is good. Thank you. So I'll just add that at our previous meeting, I had said that I was going to give sort of a State of the Union address tonight, and I didn't do that, in part because I was waiting for Council to complete our strategic priorities piece. And I feel that once that is done and we rise and report would be more appropriate at that time. I was more just excited about our budget being adopted and hitting the ground on some long overdue and necessary capital projects, of which we've approved, hopefully, and we'll see success with a grant. But in terms of recent highlights, you may have seen me about town with the president of the Chamber of Commerce last week, and the week before handing out the awards to the various recipients around our community. The awards night was held virtually, so we couldn't hand off the trophies. So we found a sort of COVID safe way of doing so with almost all of the recipients. So it was nice just to get out and walk about town with President Mason. On other notes, the CRD's work is firing up again, still under Chair Plant, but the committee structure has changed somewhat. So planning and protective services and transportation have been separated into two around the CRD. We know that transportation continues to be a challenge. So in this way, just trying to find some ways to advance necessary work in a cohesive way. So be more on that to report out later. My work with the South Nation on the Solutions Lab continues, and we'll be having another session on Friday. And some fun things that I've been doing today. My cousin is an ESL teacher and works with immigrants in Canada, in Calgary, who are looking to improve language skills for either citizenship tests or employment and the like. So I was able to join her class today. And mainly to talk about local government and how important we are in communities. I always feel that we're the overlooked order of government when I feel we're and then we heard by others, oh, you're the closest to the people. Yes, we are. We have a tremendous impact. So it was nice just to share my perspective with the group. There was around 80 students Zooming with us this morning. I'm also Zooming with our local Pathfinder group this coming Wednesday at 6 o'clock. So they were able to shift their meeting from Mondays to Wednesdays. I am a former Pathfinder leader, very devout brownie in my day. So I always treasure the opportunity to meet with either any of our guiding groups as well as our scout. Fun fact, you may know I am an honorary member of Souk Scouts, which is kind of neat. So anyway, that's just something that I'm looking forward to. And other than that, it's just sort of a mix of housekeeping items and then getting started. Our newly formed Souk Health Committee that is co-chaired with Island Health has kicked off with an inaugural meeting. Terms of references have gone out to the various representatives. So the meeting structure will be every 2 months. The Souk Homelessness Coalition, we had a bit of a briefing meeting on how we're going to kick off, which will also be starting off in February. And then there's work happening with the South Island Prosperity Project. There's a session tomorrow amongst some others. But with that group, what I'll probably do is look to hand over the representation of that to Councillor Lagenas. It fits with his community active liaison role. And there's just so many conflicts with my schedule there that I'd rather have somebody who can sort of commit to it fully rather than sort of in part here and there would probably be a better fit. So yeah, so those are all things. And then just a fun thing I'll share is my neighbors and I have decided to leave some of our Christmas lights on. We sort of say, well, how long are we going to leave them up there? And I say, well, maybe the first day of spring. Maybe when my in-laws can visit and see them and we can have a Christmas gathering together. Not really sure. Some of the stuff on the bushes I'll have to pull out because other things are growing through them and then it'll be a nightmare to try to, it'll never come out otherwise. But you'll see this corner of Driftwood Drive is illuminated. Mainly it's our way of just, it's still dreary out, of bringing some cheer as we hold on through this pandemic together. So we're getting there. There'll be another, I did attend an Island Health update and there was a comment or a question raised by another mayor who is looking to sort of plan a community event in the summertime and what would the summer look like. There's still a lot that we don't know, but basically it was said that expect summer of 2021 to look like the summer of 2020. So not because the vaccine rollout won't be completed till I think October is sort of BC's target, depending on supply chains. We'll hopefully see some easing of restrictions. The current round that we're in right now is a bit tough, I'll admit. We may see easing, but we're not going to be full on celebration. So they also shared that Dr. Henry and others are actively working to put together those either return to sport or return to whatever guidelines. However, they may or may not be in place for an organizer of an event. So that's just in a highlight that came out of Island Health that did sort of stay with me. Transit is also moving ahead. There was a delay in sort of approval of the budget because we didn't know what the COVID recovery and the COVID relief looked like. However, that's 42 million over 2 years. And also the leases of the buses, there was a 6-month waiver of no lease payments, which resulted in significant savings for the commission. So transit service will continue on, and the province recognizes this as a priority to get people safely move them throughout the community. There'll be more updates to come on the capital upgrades. We were hoping for some to kick off here in Souk, and all of that, of course, just got pushed aside because of COVID. So in the future months, when I have more information, I'll be able to share some of that with you. And other than that, it's just busy as always. I'm at home doing some virtual meetings and in the office sometimes, and I'll do my best to keep staff apprised so they know where to find me. Am I in or out? So, and that just helps with the movement of documents or whatever. But I love that I can team in with staff accordingly on matters that are a priority item. Those of you who have not been in yet, you see this orange meeting and event sheet. I love this sheet because it's so helpful. So what staff have also done on the reverse side now, you probably wouldn't have seen this yet, is included a number of highlights so we're aware of them and which dates. So starting off on February 1st is Black History Month. I did a video today with Christina Moog to get that put into place, as well as items on Picture Suit, Pink Shirt Day, and other sort of note dates so that we're all aware of what's happening and can share that news there. So if there's more that you would like to see, this is something that we can discuss. The goal is to keep it on one page. So I see a hand, I think Councillor Lagenas and perhaps Councillor Beto. So we'll go to Councillor Lagenas.
Yeah, I just had a question for Councillor St. Pierre on the CRD water infrastructure upgrades. Are they planning upgrades in Souk? And if so, can we make sure that they coordinate with our road improvement plans? I don't want to see us paving roads and then having them tear them up again.
I don't think Souk needs to worry about that. They're really looking at upgrades to some of the mains, so the main distribution pipelines that are aging out because they're made of concrete. So it's a big project, but I don't think it's going to affect Souk.
And I'll just add that CRD Water has been very forthcoming with its plans. Galena, for example, we did some paving work in conjunction. They get it. They're in our community all the time. Where we ran into challenges were more like Fortis, TELUS, and other sort of non-government entities is where we ran into some challenges in the past. So I think the CRD has done a good job in communicating its intent with us. Councillor Beddoes, did you have a comment?
Okay.
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if I saw a hand, so I just thought I would check. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the meeting. 8:53, I believe, is my time, so I'll call for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. As always, I wish you good health and be well. And thank you for all that you're doing in our community, members of council and our staff as well. Call the question on adjournment. All those in favor? Everyone's in favor. That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Take good
Good
care.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, all.